I was walking home, I was pushing Brooke, and I saw these two cars drive past, and it was bizarre because I just knew, and I was like, Lee's been hurt, shit, Lee's been hurt, Lee's been hurt. And then they got out of the car and said, are you Corporal Lee Scott's wife? And they just said, they said his full name had been killed by an IED this morning in Afghanistan. But even now, I wake up and he's still in Afghan, and he's working for the SAS. It's like, he's dead. Like, I promise you, he's dead.
Welcome to the Debrief Podcast, and this week I've got a young lady called Nikki Scott. She is the founder of a phenomenal charity called Scotty's Little Soldiers. How are you? You all right?
Hello. Yeah, good.
Great. I'm stoked about this because I want to find out all about it. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to treat you no differently to anybody else.
Okay.
I'm going to take you right back to your childhood.
Oh, gosh, really?
We're going to unpack you, all right? Yeah. And then we're going to stick it all together and we're going to find out what you're doing, all right?
All right.
How's that sound?
Cool.
Right, so let's take you back. Little Nikki, where are you from?
So I grew up in Essex, Basildon.
Essex
yeah.
bird.
Only till I was about 7 or 8. Not that there's anything wrong with
No.
my mum will say.
Whereabouts in Essex?
Basildon.
Basildon, okay.
Yeah,
right.
so grew up there.
Posher part of Essex.
Really?
Is it? I don't know.
Yeah, and then moved to Norfolk. So went from a really cool location to the countryside.
Norfolk's all right. Whereabouts in Norfolk were you?
Kings Lynn.
Yeah, I know Kings Lynn.
Yeah,
I lived near Mildenhall. I was on Narrowboat.
Oh, yeah,
up there. I
okay.
was living on Narrowboat. We loved it up there. Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, moved there. Dad's job, work moved there. So moved there.
Okay, so what did your dad do?
He was I never really know, to be honest, when I was growing up, but he was a depot manager.
Oh, okay.
So
right.
in transport business and
yeah.
Moved up there, and then that's where I grew up, met Lee, and then that's it really.
School.
What
did you do at school? How was you at
I was all right at school.
Was it?
I was a
good?
pretty good girl. Yeah, I was a good girl.
Yeah.
I was.
Did
I
you
was sort of in the
achieve?
middle, yeah.
Did you achieve?
Yeah, I did all right.
Did you?
Yeah.
What did you get? Come on, tell us what you got.
What GCSEs? I didn't do A levels. I went on to do a course in childcare because it was the only thing that I found easy. I never knew what I wanted to do at all. Like I was like. Older brother went off to uni, and I was like, I definitely don't want to go off to uni. School was hard for me, but I did all right. I got an A, 2 B's, 6 C's, and a D. I still remember it there.
Level, that is. That's proper SWAT.
I'm proud of that.
Yeah, it's all right.
I don't know how though, if I'm totally honest.
Did you do any activities outside of school? Did you go?
Yeah, did a bit of horse riding, did a bit of that, but most of outside school stuff. My brother did football. My dad managed his football team.
Oh, okay.
It was took up our whole weekends. It was very much.
So you just tag on and
tagged on with the older lads.
Play football. Did you go anywhere with football? Did he, or was just?
No, wanted to. Had trials for a couple of teams, but then got injuries and just
Yeah, it's
different
competitive.
things.
My son did the same.
And very young.
Went all over the place. It was
but,
murder. So a happy childhood. Are his parents still together? All that sort of stuff now?
No, so they split just when I was just before my GCSEs. Which was
right at the right time. Then there you go.
They
Throw
were
you in
great with
turmoil.
that.
Everything going on.
But no, really, really good. Can't fault him. My dad now lives in Cyprus with he's remarried.
Oh, okay.
Mum, I'm really close with. Literally saves my bacon on a daily basis with helping kids.
Do you live near your mum, do you?
Yeah, about 20 minutes away.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, one of my best friends, my mum.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So you left school. What did you do when you leave school?
Yeah. So did my childcare course. Then while I was doing that, sort of at the end of that, I think I turned 18 and then got a job in a bar.
Okay.
Ended up loving it. Met Lee. Thought he was a complete, honestly.
Was he a squaddy when you met him?
No. This is before. He was really young, immature. Either drunk, hungover. I was like, he used to ask me out all the time. I'd be like, no way, mate. And then ended up just finished my course, but actually loved working in the bars. So ended up.
Okay, where was your bar?
It was just in Kings Lynn town.
Okay.
And then
what was it called?
Dr. Firsty's.
Dr. Firsty's.
Yeah, and
That's
it was
a name for a bar,
it was
Dr.
the
Firsty.
bar to go to for the youngsters. All RAF Marham used to come in on a Thursday night karaoke night. It was a cool bar. And then a Weatherspoons opened, or a Lloyd's number 1 it was back then. And I went across there and then became duty manager. And then when I married Lee, I then moved away. Then I went back to childcare, decided the hours were not working out.
Okay.
Had Kai, decided I couldn't work these hours anymore because it was a hotel as well. So it was like sometimes 6 a.m, sometimes finishing late. So
Spoons is 24/7, isn't it?
yeah. And
You're in there.
then, so got a job at a nursery school, which was what I was qualified for. And then when we married, I moved down to Tidworth.
All right. So when you married, was he in the army then?
Yeah.
So what was he doing when you met him?
Yeah.
What was he doing, and what was he doing?
Oh my God, when I met him, he must have had so many different jobs. I can't even remember. I remember he worked in a bakery. I think he was being a plasterer when I met him, but he always wanted to join the army.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which I found fun because I was just like, I couldn't see it at all. I was like, there's no way your gobby little thing could be in the army. Like, I was proper like, but we became like best mates. And when he joined the army, I think he first tried to join and then he got turned away because and they said, come back in 2 years when you haven't used your inhaler. And apparently he threw his inhaler in the bin that day and was like, right.
Well, that's a good move, isn't it? It's a good move.
Yeah.
So when he joined up, you was married when he joined up, was you?
No.
Okay, so he joins up.
Yeah.
How did you find that? Because he must have gone away for the sort of like, oh, he's gone, where's he gone?
Yeah, and
who
they
did
were
he
based
join?
in Germany.
Who was he with?
2nd Royal Tank Regiment.
Okay.
Yeah, and they were based in Germany. So we just kept in touch. And every time he came back, I was like, oh, he's like growing up a bit. Like, he seems a bit different.
Yeah.
And my mum kept saying, God, you're talking about Lee all the time. Yeah, and I was like, no, I'm not. Like,
he's nice. He's
no,
all
I'm not. Because he was constantly, he was always like, when I'm back, I'm going to take you out. I'm like, no, all right, Lee. And then, I don't know, it just happened. And then it happened really quick, yeah.
Really, flash to bang, that's it.
Yeah.
Proper.
I think because we'd been mates for years.
Yeah. So you knew each other. You knew each other to the point of being friends.
Yeah.
And then you just got to,
I now wish.
You've got
to
seal the deal, then,
I wish I'd have had more time with him and given in to him earlier. But he probably weren't ready. That's what I think.
I think, by the way he's saying to me, he grew up a little bit in the army. So,
massively.
Whereas before he probably didn't want the responsibility. He loved the bar.
Yeah.
Off his nut, having a time of his life. Then the army's like, no, you need to sort yourself out, son.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, he definitely grew up. Yeah. And then as we got married, his regiment was moving back to the UK.
Okay.
So that's when, we were doing long distance and stuff, and then that's when I was like,
murder
Kai was about to start school.
Okay.
So we were like, okay, this is the time to do it this year.
Okay. So you get married.
Yep.
You move to a married quarter.
Yeah, Tidworth.
Tidders. Old Tidders.
There was nothing there.
What year was that? What was that? What year was that?
2008, February.
Oh,
January? Wow. Yeah, something like that. Early.
Yeah, I was there in 87.
Late 07.
87, I was
Oh,
there.
God. They've got it so good these days. They moan about it, and I'm like, you've got Tesco's, you've got Subway.
Station Hill. When I was there, I had a kebab shop, a little newsagents, and I think the chippy, and that was it. And then you had the drummer, which isn't there anymore.
No, I don't remember the drummer.
No, the drummer's gone.
Right.
The only thing that's left there really is the Ram.
The Ram, yeah.
The country club and the British Legion.
The Legion, yeah.
Legion's all right. I won the meat raffle in there once. I wasn't a local and they hated me. They looked at me like, he's won the meat raffle. I had to literally go out through the toilet, I'm telling you.
I do, when I go back though, I feel really like I've gone home. It's really bizarre. I guess that was my old life. So whenever I go back there, I feel like
was your quarter?
I had 3 within a year and a half. It was ridiculous.
Really, upgrades or?
Yeah, actually, I think they were. I was out in Shipton Bellinger, and then because Kai had so many health issues and that, apparently we were in Wiltshire or Hampshire, I can't remember the way round, but to see the medics, we needed to move just down the road, so we were within the county.
Yeah.
And then I lived on Zooch Estate. And then when I was pregnant with Brooke, we put him for a free bed and got Matthews, which I was like, this is well nice.
Yeah.
Even though it's been condemned now, that house.
What rank was Scotty?
Corporal in the end,
Full corporal, okay.
Yeah.
So, life's fairly good at this stage of the campaign, isn't it?
I loved,
Living the dream.
I did. I mean, the army's not amazing, is it, when you're like...
Were you a pad's wife that used to get involved and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, not like running the show, but had good mates
but
and
you took
loved.
Up to stuff
Oh
and
yeah. And I loved that. Yeah, 100%. I loved. Yeah, it was crap when you'd be sent away for a week and you're like, oh, whatever. But I went because we were just before we got married. He got put on the commander's course.
Okay.
And he was the youngest. He was like a lance corporal, the youngest ever to be put on that and pass. So he was ecstatic, but my honeymoon to Egypt got cancelled, and that was my first welcome to married
Womp,
life.
womp.
Yeah. I was like, oh, God.
Well, don't worry, love, I'm going to sort of return.
But I'm a tank commander, babe.
Yeah.
I'm like, way. But yeah, no, I honestly loved it. My mates were the best. Just, I had such a good time.
So
like,
was there a
so
sort of
good.
like undercurrent then? Because the country was effectively at war then, wasn't it?
Yeah,
So you knew there was a chance that at some stage
Oh,
of
I
the
knew,
campaign, he's going Afghan or Iraq.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen, isn't it?
Yeah, he'd not been long back from Iraq.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I knew when we were married, like I knew he was going to be soon going to Afghan. Yeah, 100%.
And your mates, presumably, were they all from the same unit, or did you have mates who different units and all that?
No, they were all from my regiment. But weirdly, when Lee went, and I'm not like I'm not the expert at military stuff, but when Lee went, it was just his squadron.
Okay.
So actually, the majority of his regiment was still. So his two best mates were still here.
Pieces,
yeah, it was just one
he's been
squadron.
And his squadron's gone over to where was it? Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's gone to Afghan.
Yeah.
How long was he there for?
6 weeks.
Okay, so that's 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Presumably, nowadays you could talk to him on the phone while he was there, all that sort of stuff. Did you have much contact while he was there?
Yeah, the first bit, I was like, oh, this is different. Like, this is all right. Because Facebook was just sort of up and coming, Skype.
Yeah.
And obviously ringing the landline, I felt like it was all right. Like I thought, God, this obviously I missed him massively. And actually we were, like Lee was my best mate. Like, do you know what I mean as well? So just him being away was really like.
A lot of couples are like that, aren't they? Do you know what I mean? Certainly myself and Wendy, we're like best friends. Do you know what I mean? It's like.
You really noticed when you weren't around massively.
It was a
huge like
void in your house, isn't there?
Yeah. But I think, at first I felt like, the communication's good. I was quite naive. I didn't, or maybe it was probably self-protection, but didn't have the news on, didn't really think about where he was, if I'm honest, didn't want to know. I was more like, God, 6 months is so long, like he's not going to be back till Christmas.
Yeah, so you're not really thinking about the danger,
no, I didn't.
You'd do your nothing if you did that.
Until about, I think it was about 10 days before Lee was killed, Trooper Josh Hammond was killed. And I got a phone call from the welfare to say Lee'd been involved in an incident but was okay, but there had been a fatality within his troop. And that's when I was like...
And what was that incident? What had happened there?
I don't totally know. I think it was an IED, but I don't know what they were doing or no. I didn't but I remember thinking, oh, this is...
that
hit all the wives and girlfriends that had people. That was suddenly like... One part of me was like, well, that was his close call. Like, that he's all right, and that's going to be all right.
Lightning don't strike twice.
Yeah,
going through your mind, all that sort of stuff.
And then the other part was, holy shit, this is like he's really out there, isn't it? Yeah, and I hadn't let myself. But I hadn't let myself at all. And when Lee was on the phone to me, even out there, he never. He'd never be one to tell, you know what I mean? It was all like, what are you up to? What are the kids doing? I'm all right. Like, it was all like that, really upbeat.
Yeah.
And then me and my mate Laura, who her husband was out there, Trev, after that, we literally went a little bit insane to the point where we were just supporting each other. We both had young kids. And we used to text each other at night a kiss, just so in the morning we could see, because we were like, you think about it, what if we collapse? And no one knows we've collapsed because we both had tiny kids. So we were like, all right, if I don't see a cross in the morning on my phone, I'll come and check on you. It was like, and then I used to get to the point where I'd be like watching out my window for cars. Like it literally would eat, like couldn't sleep, felt sick. Like for those 10 days after Josh, it's not
a subject that's really covered by a lot of people or spoken about. Everybody's seen the podcast that we've done with the lads and the lasses that have been away, chinny chick and all that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Full on in the action. But nobody's really ever spoken to it from your perspective.
Yeah.
And that's massively interesting to me because it is a huge thing, isn't it?
It's horrible.
Like you are supporting someone. So you can't be phoning him every 10 minutes because then you're a welfare case.
Yeah.
And you can
I don't know how to phone him, to be fair.
Potentially. You've got to support the others that are around you.
100%. I didn't want to put him off. Like he needs to focus on what he's doing and just be. And when he speaks to me, I need to be, yeah, we're good. Even if the kids have done my head in and I could really do
Yeah,
without,
that's
you know,
the other thing as well.
yeah.
Even if a kid's being naughty,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily
Oh,
want
no, I'd
his
never-
words to the kids to be, right, sort yourself out, you
No,
little twat.
no,
Because
yeah,
it's
exactly.
like, hang on a
No.
minute, he hasn't got enough time to talk to the child
Yeah.
anyway, so he wants to be a nice conversation.
And I don't
with
want
the
him
child.
worrying about stuff like that. No,
Yeah.
very much like we were both to each other, I think, sugarcoating it up and just saying how much we loved each other and, you know, like just trying to be like, oh, where should we go when you come home on R&R? Like that's how we were always dealing with that. And then it was quite, because I mean, I'd lay in bed thinking, oh, I wonder what he's doing. But in my head, I was like, well, he could be asleep on Camp Bastion, tucked up in bed for all I know. Fine, having a lovely sleep. But the not knowing, and then there's part of you that don't want to know. So you're really like torn.
And the other part of what's happened with someone else.
Yeah, I mean that. Yeah,
which must
and that
have
was
really torn through the whole camp. I mean, it tears through the lads when someone. Lasses.
He was. I think he was only 18. He was a young lad. Like, just horrible. Like you just felt for the family, felt for the lads. And Lee called me after. I spoke to Lee twice after Josh, and the first time after Josh was something that I'll remember forever because he wasn't like the same Lee. Like he was emotional, and he'd never be like that to me. He naturally was telling me like, I'm all right. We washed the blood up. Like he was saying stuff without realizing what he was saying.
Yeah.
And I know it was a particular bad, and I know, like, I don't know the ins and outs of what happened, but I know it was really bad. I know that when Trev came back, one of Lee's mates, he was telling me how Lee was absolutely outstanding in that situation and like dealing with body bags and like, you know, really taking care. And I think they had a moment in the back of a vehicle, and I think when I spoke to Lee after that, like I felt so I just wanted to give him a hug and support him, and I couldn't do anything because he felt just so far away, and I just thought that is not Lee. Like he sounds awful, and he said, "I'm signing off. I'm coming out as soon as I get back to Camp Bastion. I'm signing off." And I was like, "Lee, just think about it. Don't worry about us. Just get through this tour, and then we can talk." But he said, "I've never seen anything like this. Like this is not worth where we are."
Yeah.
And then luckily I spoke to him like a day or so after that, and he was like back. He was like, we're doing this for Josh. We're like, we're
after
back
these
out.
things happen, especially if you've been involved and you've had eyes on, and it's not nice. There's some honking stuff to be dealt with in your own mind.
Yeah.
And you do have this thing where you sort of like almost talk differently because other things are going on in your head.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I can't imagine.
And he's probably trying to shield a little bit of that without shielding a little bit. Do you know what I mean? He's trying to let you know a little bit without telling you a lot.
Yeah.
So that's, you know, it's a hard thing to do.
Yeah. But I hate it because I just thought, oh my God, he's like, it felt like he was on his own and just couldn't talk to me properly. There was no time. Do you know what I mean? It was like, I've got to go. Like, it was all quick calls, like out in fobs or like, that all makes sense to you. But like, it was all very, and apparently he used to nick the lads. Like he used to do a bit of gambling, a bit of Scrabble and a little bit of like cards, and he'd get like their minutes or something. So he'd phone home and have a bit longer or I was like, sounds like you're in prison, but
currency is different out in them places. I'm telling you, you know what I mean? It's not the same. It's not the same as being back home, as you know.
And then so the last time I spoke to him, he was not back to himself, but obviously he was like, we're doing this for Josh. I'm boosting the lads. We're out, we're out here. And then, didn't speak to him then it was 5 days later Lee was killed, but that was the last time I spoke.
So you spoke to him, so when you didn't get a phone call off him for the first couple of days after you don't know that's going to be your last phone call, so presumably you left it how you normally would, love you, darling, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Was it normal for you not to speak to him for 3 or 4 days?
No, but there had been a death every single day.
So you're now thinking,
so
you must now be...
every day.
Your heart must be racing every time the door goes, every time a car goes past your house.
Like I can still feel that. Like I remember welfare officer Jace Chapman. It's like a good friend of mine now, and I remember talking to him about it since. But he knocked at my door, and I was shaking. I was just like, and he went and he opened the door, and he was like, "Oh my God, it's not. It's literally Lee's asked me to bring this round. It's something to do with his wages or something." And I literally was just like, and he was like, "I will never ever do that to anyone again." Like, because he was from welfare, I just automatically thought something had happened. But no, it wasn't normal. Not then, it wasn't normal. But I knew there was a death every day. So, and Lee used to say though, no news, good news. Like we can't call because they shut the phone lines down.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you don't hear anything, it's all I'm all right. But it was horrible. And on the day that Lee died, there was like every day that week, there was like one of us girlfriends or wives that would be feeling really crap and really low, and we'd all help each other. And that day was mine. I'm normally quite a positive, upbeat. Like for other people, I'm like, you know, I'm like, don't worry, Laura. Like I was like looking after everyone. I felt, and then that day I was just like, I cannot snap out of this mood. And I remember Laura going, "He'll ring tonight. It'll be tonight. You'll hear from him tonight." And then literally, I was coming back to my car from that walk, ready to pick Kai up from school. And as I walked down my cul-de-sac, I saw 2 cars drive past, and I instantly.
Talk us through what happened if you can.
Yeah.
Must be still difficult for you to.
Yeah,
talk
it
about
is,
this.
and it's like nearly, it's like 15, nearly 16 years on, and yet it's like, well, some bits are clear as day, other bits are complete blanks. It's really bizarre how your brain works, isn't it? But I was walking home, I was pushing Brooke, and I was walking, and I was like the last house at the end of a cul-de-sac, and I saw these 2 cars drive past, and it was bizarre because I just like knew. I was like, and I was crying, walking down to the street, walking up to these cars that had parked up outside my house. And I was like, Lee's been hurt, shit, Lee's been hurt. And then they got out of the car and said, "Are you Corporal Lee Scott's wife?" And I was like,
Did
yeah.
you know them?
No, I didn't know them. One was in combats and one was in a suit. And I didn't have a clue who they were. They just asked if I was Lee's wife.
Yeah.
And they said, "Can we go inside?" And I lived in like, it was like a terrace. So there was like...
your heart must be sinking now. Your
Oh,
heart
yeah.
must be almost
I was crying. I was
almost in
just
your legs
like,
now. It's
yeah,
gone,
but I literally was just like, Lee's been hurt. Like, oh my God. And I was like, just tell me what's happened. And they got me inside, and then they wanted to take me upstairs to sit down because I lived in like my lounge was upstairs.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was like, no. And I must have been I must have been getting Brooke out the pushchair. She was 7 months old. And they were like, "Can you hand your baby to my colleague?" And I was like, "No." And then I got like, I was like, "Tell me what's happened to Lee." And then they told me then that Lee had been killed.
How did they word it? Can you remember?
I can't remember. I think they didn't know a lot of information. I remember that. And they just said, Lee Michael, they said his full name had been killed by an IED this morning in Afghanistan. And they said,
away,
no, like
did it just go straight through you as if
I said, "You've got the wrong Scott. There's another Scott in his troop." I remember saying that. And then there's a big chunk that I can't remember, but panic of like, this isn't happening. Because I dreamt this for so many nights. Do you know what I mean? It was like, I would say it took months before it took the boys to come back, and I went to their medals parade and stood on the parade square to watch them and see Lee wasn't there. That's when it hit me, and that was December. So it was months later. Because I just couldn't get my head.
What was the procedure? What's the procedure from that moment? And then you're like, sort of like, these people presumably don't stay around your house all night, do they?
No, you don't want them to either. No. You're just like, they then went into, I mean, they probably didn't go into this quite as quick, but my panic was, I've got to pick Kai up from school. It's like 3 o'clock, like I have to go and pick Kai up from school. Yeah. And they said, "Is there someone that can pick him up?" And I was like, well, was anyone else hurt? Because if I ring my mate to pick him up, like her husband's out there as well. So and they were like, "We can't tell you any other information about it." So in the end, they must have, and this is the stuff they must have rung the school, because then his head teacher, I remember his head teacher must have brought him home, because a bit later Kai was there.
So you've just more or less gone into a bit of a meltdown at home.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Not even registering anything.
And I went into panic of Kai, and then they were saying like, you have your first decision that you have to make is about like, it can be released to the news in 24 hours or 48 hours to give you time. I mean,
but would you even give a shit about newspapers and shit at that stage?
But then but you did stuff. Well, I think I go a bit practical, and I was like, but hang on a minute, like his dad, like how do I tell? Like no one knows. Like I don't want someone to see it. And
so did you break the news to his parents? And
they said, who needs to know, and then they can tell other people, and we can ring them if you want us to. And so I said, I want to tell his dad. That's who he was really close to. So I think I rung his dad, which was
that must have been an awful conversation.
And to hear a grown man just absolutely break down on. I mean, he knew, because I'd never ring him at work, like ever. I've never done that. So he must have known before I even got to that phone call. Yeah.
I mean, as yourself, I think, from a lot of people I've spoken to in a similar situation, I think you get this gut feeling before, like you did on the way home.
Yeah.
It
I
goes
think
through
me
you.
and the kids were awake when
Yeah.
it happened in the night.
It goes through
It's
you.
weird.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like,
it goes through you. It
yeah,
it makes your hair stand up on the back of your head talking about it.
yeah. It's all so surreal. Even when you're doing it, like thinking back to it now, like I can picture where I was standing in my lounge, clear as crystal, these men, but I can't, like, it still feels weird. Like, I can't believe, like, we went all through that, like, and that happened. And yeah, it's just heartbreaking because you have to then, there's stuff you have to deal with that you don't want to, like you said, deal with. There's things that the whole time you're thinking, what would Lee want me to do? But you're also like, I can't believe he's like, his toothbrush weren't at home. Like, I'd done his washing. Do you know what I mean? It had been 6 weeks. So everything it weren't like he went out that morning and his cup was still on the side. Like do you know what I mean? It was just so like, I just felt like he was still in Afghan. Like I was just waiting for the phone
really
to ring.
Changed, does it? Apart from
No,
the fact that he ain't coming home.
that they told me that. But to me, I was like, I'm just waiting for the landline to ring. So I run for it. Like that was the only and then I'm telling these people, and then your house gets slowly filled with people that you're like, I don't want everyone here. Like I can't, like everyone's crying, and do you know what I mean? It was just like, I can't deal with this. And then it was just. And then the news was on. It felt like, whether or not it was, to me when I look back, it felt like the news channel was on 24/7. It was bizarre because it was the worst week. I think Lee was like one of 8 that were killed that week.
Yeah.
So when we had his repatriation, there were 8 guys. Oh. And it was just
Did
torture.
you go to that, did you? So where did they bring him back to?
RF Lynham.
Okay.
And that is probably like, I don't know, well, you can't describe what's worse. Did you drive to Lynham that day?
Did you drive? Did someone take you there?
No, like the my visiting officer. So after the 2 guys leave you on that day, you then get a visiting officer, which is from your regiment. And I was lucky that I had just an amazing guy, Jace Horn, who I didn't know him, I'd never met him, but he'd been to Kosovo, I think it was with Lee, knew Lee, like. And so I instantly felt a connection. It was quite interesting because when you meet the hierarchy that come and give their part, I'm just like, I was so like, I don't, like, you didn't know Lee. Like, I don't want to know.
The colonel walks in, it's like,
just,
you know what I mean?
like,
I do get that. I 100%
I'm
get
like,
that.
but anyone, like his mates, his 2 best mates, I felt so like, I wanted them near me all the time. It was really bizarre. I was just like, I just want to be with Mav and Moon, like, because I feel like Lee's there. But yeah, had Jace Horn was my VO. He drove me. He was amazing. Looked after us. I went with my dad and then Lee's family. You can take 8 people.
I mean, that must have been horrendous in itself, watching that come in. And obviously 8 people coming back at the same time.
That was literally torture. Like you literally, Lee was first off, which he would have loved. I think it's to do with the Royal Tank Regiment or something, I've been told. But I was like, so you stand in like a tent on the runway and the plane goes past and then lands, and you stand in your 2s, like so me and my dad at the front, and then it was like Lee's mum and dad. You're in 2 rows of 2s, and then the next family are there, and then the next family, so you're in 8s, and then literally as like your loved one comes off the plane, you obviously just absolutely break down, and then you hear the next family and the next family and the next. Do you know what I mean? And you are just feeling the pain of everyone.
There's
just
press there and everything, isn't there?
I didn't even notice the press at that point, if I'm honest. So I don't feel like they were on. I don't feel like they were intrusive because I cannot remember that at all. It was just no. And I always remember as the plane came over. I don't know whose dad it was, but one of the guys' dads shouted home, "Welcome home, lads!" And because I was just like, oh. This is not the homecoming that I'd prepped. Like me and my mates used to be like, oh, I'm gonna lose a stone. I'm gonna wear this. Like thinking about when they come home, like how we're gonna meet them, and like it's just. And then I stood there on the runway thinking, this is not what we planned. Like it's just, I don't. And then after that, I remember we were in a room and we weren't allowed to go to Wootton Bassett, and I felt really pissed off. Like I was really angry because I knew other families were allowed to go there, but because there was 8, they said the press was just, it was the security reasons. None of us could go with, so we had to watch on a screen.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was like that was probably my first experience of feeling, like I felt this feeling so many times since Lee's died, but like that emotional but proud feeling. Like
Yeah.
it was like I feel shit, but I feel so proud, like of his service and of him, and
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, but
Yeah. There was no.
yeah, I did go to Wootton Bassett after though.
Okay, so you made your way down.
Yeah, not as the cars went
Rebel.
through, but I was like, Jace, I want to go Wootton Bassett.
Rebel.
And then I ended up, I just saw some flowers, and a lot of my family and Lee's mates were at Wootton Bassett. So then we went for a drink, and I remember just sitting in a pub drinking with like some really old like veterans from the tank regiment, like old lads, and just felt like, I don't know, just needed to be around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get that bit done, and then I suppose you're prepping for your funeral.
Yeah. It's just bizarre,
Which
isn't it?
again,
28
did he
years
have
old,
the
and you're
full-
just
the
like,
full military,
Yeah.
military honours, all that sort of stuff.
yeah. I didn't go over military headstone, which part of me is like, oh, maybe I should have done that. But it was very limited on what you can put on it, and I was like, he was a dad as well, he was a husband as well, and I didn't want it just about his
Father,
military.
he's a son.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so I didn't, but I do think, if I'd have done that, I know that grave would be looked after forever and ever and ever. So there's
So where was he buried? Did you,
in Kings Lynn.
okay.
Yeah,
so
near where his dad
the
lived.
cemetery in Tidworth or nothing like that?
No, and again, like all these decisions, like you feel like you'd normally talk to your husband
Yeah.
and make together,
course
and then
you
all
would.
of a
I mean,
sudden you're like, don't know what to do. Like,
I'm
what
going to be honest,
should
when I
do?
was a
Like,
soldier at that age, I didn't want to talk to anybody about not coming back off a tour. It wasn't a conversation I wanted to have. You might have upped your life insurance or whatever slightly, or bought some more packs
Lee,
or whatever.
on that.
Do you know what I mean?
Lee come home one day and he come running upstairs and he was like, if I snuff it, you'll be minted, babe, like that. And I was like, what? Like, and that was, but I think he was pretty, mature in like making sure we were looked after.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean, doing everything that he should have done. I think it hit him more than any other tour, because I think he recorded storybooks for the kids, like a bedtime story. So they've got his voice even now.
Did you find out all this afterwards, did you? That he
No,
recorded
so
stories?
I knew he was doing all that because he
Okay.
was really emotional. He didn't think, he left it to the last minute, like literally the day before he left.
Yeah.
And he didn't think he really was like, oh God, like I don't, like leaving the kids now, like it's really affected him. Because Kai was like his best buddy. Kai was 5 and like they were just thick as thieves. And Brooke, he knew he'd be away for her first birthday and just like,
Yeah.
but he was just, I'll be back for Christmas. And like, that was his thing. But he was very, he definitely did his admin and done the stuff he should have done. But he was like, do you want a last letter? I was like, no. And this was the only conversation we had. Like after he'd said that, like, if I snuff it thing that I hated, I was just like, what? He then said, do you want me to write you a last letter? And I was like, I don't even want to know. Don't even talk to me about it. Like, I don't want to think about it. And that was all that was said.
Did he write you on?
No, and I wish he had now. He can't win even now.
No. Oh,
No,
dear.
so much. Just, God. At 28.
Yeah, it's a
just
very
like,
hard. I'm saying at that age, that is a really
Yeah.
young age to be thinking
Lee
about
was
that sort of stuff.
26,
You know,
do you know what I
my
mean?
son told me off the other week, I'm in my 50s now. Have you sorted yourself out, Dad? You're like, oh, right, yeah. So, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't like
100%.
talking about it now, let alone
I've done
in
it
your
now.
20s.
Everything.
Yeah.
Like, just, you don't,
And
life
like you
changes
say, those
like that.
decisions that you then had to make, where's he going to be buried?
Yeah.
Who's doing this? Who's doing
Yeah.
that? What would he have wanted?
Yeah, we didn't talk about any of that stuff. Like, I wouldn't have had a clue. I just had to go off my gut of and you just think, oh, I hope I'm not doing wrong or letting him down. And you're like, oh, am I upsetting him? And I'm upsetting her. And I'm like,
Did your family pull round?
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, there's always family dynamics when something like this grief affects people in different ways. But back then, I think we were pretty good. Yeah, it was just hard. It was so, I mean, Lee's dad, he was very close to, and he lived back in Kings Lynn where my mum was.
Yeah.
And my dad was in Essex in Harlow at the time. Lee's mum was a bit further over, like Somerset way, so not as far. But I didn't know her as well.
Yeah.
But again, I would say like my family and my friends were literally like I've never felt as lonely as I felt then.
No, I can imagine.
But my family and friends were.
It's one of those
amazing.
things that, you know, when all's said and done, people eventually go home, don't they?
Yeah.
And you're sat there with your kids.
Yeah.
And then that's like,
Yeah. The
you know what I
nights
mean?
were the
phone
worst.
doesn't go
100%.
as often
Yeah.
as it perhaps did in the beginning, and
Yeah.
perhaps you didn't want it to go that often.
Yeah.
In the beginning, do you know what I mean? But then now, all of a sudden, the reality is,
Yeah.
you're pushing forward on
Everyone's
your
going back to life, and it's like it's not the same for
own. How
me.
did you feel?
I hate, like I went through so many different, I've learned over the years, obviously with what I do now, so much about bereavement, but I literally, I remember going on to camp once and literally losing my shit at like down the tank park and like, and so one of his mates came through. I was just like, I can't like.
We talk about, and rightly so, we talk about, people's mental health who've served, but your mental health must have taken a proper punch in the skull.
Yeah, I guess so. You're just living day by day, aren't you? Yeah. Hour by hour. But I just...
What were the military like towards you? Did their attitudes change at all? Were you still in the fold, or was there sort of like, right, when's she going to move on type thing?
No. The 2 RTR, his regiment, were like a family to me. Like, I'm not going to lie, they were really great with me. And I don't know whether that was the regiment or the lads, because I was, I guess, lucky in a way that the rest of the regiment was still there. Yeah. So his 2 best mates, I mean, he had loads of mates, but his 2 best mates were where I was. So they weren't, obviously there was still some out in Afghan. And I think that was hard, that one of my best mates, her husband was still out there. And that was really difficult because I didn't want to make her feel shit. She felt relieved, but guilty. And like, there was so many emotions.
I've been there, seriously. It is a
so
thing,
like,
I mean, when you wait for that phone call and you know there's been an incident,
yeah,
you'll be relieved that it wasn't.
Yeah,
but you'll also be gutted that it was.
Yeah,
and there's no win, is there? There's no win in that. In that scenario,
and I know
is there?
they, and it was but the regiment were like. I remember one morning I looked out my window and I had to do the school run because you have to carry on doing normal things. And it had snowed, and I looked out my window and there were 2 lads from the regiment getting the snow off my drive, and I was like, so those little things. One lad used to come around every Tuesday and cook me spag bowl. He was just a single lad on the block, bless him. He couldn't really cook, but he was like, I'm going to come around every Tuesday and cook you so you're eating. Like, just Lee's mates, just making sure. And that made me feel like I was being looked after. And
well, that's when the regiment does become a family, isn't it? That's when you see that side
I was
of it,
still very much, I was never told you got to move out your house. Like, there was stuff that went on that you're like, but I get now that, like, Lee's wages stopped on the day he died. My house rent went up. Things that you're like, what the hell? But now
Just quickly touch on that. So his wages stop. What do you now live on?
Well, it stops, and it is all to do with so they can kick in all the like compensation and pension, and they can get all the estate in order. So there's reasons it has to. Okay. So that, like with Lee, I don't know how it works with everyone, and it's all quite blurry. So if I get stuff wrong, but yeah, I know. But I remember thinking, oh, that's lovely. Like, because anything would piss me off, like anything. Like, I was just like, and then but I know now I'm like, okay, I understand why that's got to happen to kickstart other things to help me. And I was never told that I had to move. I think I was told you've got 2 years in this house, but I stayed a year. Okay. And I was never told to like move. I don't think they'd dare. I was literally like.
Did you ever worry financially?
No, I don't even think I really. I just didn't think about any of that stuff.
No,
if I'm honest.
Sort of like, it's funny how that aspect of it can be. You've got kids, you've got life. I was
just trying to cope. I knew, like, when I moved back to Norfolk after that year, I don't feel like I ever worried. I knew I'd always be all right for a good period. Like, a good period, I'd be all right. Because then I owed that to Lee had looked after us. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I knew I had money to buy a home, and I'd be all right for a while, like to look after the kids. So that is one thing. And I've met so many bereaved military families now where they have that pressure on top of everything. I mean,
that is a huge advert for young people now in the military. We're 5 minutes away from our next war. Anytime it can happen. You know what I mean? You need to sort yourself out. It's one message I'd love to get out.
Me too. Massively. Like, look after you.
That's huge, isn't it?
Yeah, and just doing your paperwork, like the amount of, like, I speak to like JCCC and different MOD related places now, and just the amount of people that say the lads don't put their dependents on the forms, like don't put their kids down, or they don't update their next of kin. So when something happens, we end up telling the ex and not the current girlfriend, and things like that. I've heard so many that I'm like,
I bet you've heard some
and
nightmares.
That actually, you blame the MOD, but if the guys don't do that stuff, so there are some stuff that I think Lee did really look after his family, like, and done the right things. It could have been, I can't imagine having that pressure on top of it.
Even if he didn't get your letter.
He didn't write me a letter, but I'll let him off.
He seemed to have done everything else that he could have done.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that period when now you've left the army. Did you feel detached completely from the army once you went to King's Lynn? Did you feel like, boom, you've just severed,
it was bizarre.
another aspect of your life
God,
off?
yeah, it's so emotional because I just think leaving that community was so hard. Because, God, sorry.
Yeah, no.
Thought I would have done this before, actually. Because this is what I don't think people get, actually.
Because some tissues if you want.
Yeah, no, I'm all right. Because you're trying to deal with the fact that you're never going to see Lee again. And like I said, that took me so long to get in my head, God, he's not actually coming home.
Yeah.
And I didn't go and see Lee. I was advised that it wouldn't be a good idea. I could have, and I wish I had. It's my one regret in my life that I should have gone to see him because he would have me. I know he would have. And I could have got some closure and said goodbye. So I don't think that helped because I just always feel, even now I wake up and I have dreams and I think, oh, it's a massive cover up and he's still in Afghan and he's working for the SAS. I still go through all this stuff. It's like, and then I have to get one of the lads to go, he is dead. Like, I promise you, he's dead. Like, I have to, even now, 16 years on, you still have those moments. But when I decided I wanted to stay, I went through anger of like, if I move out this quarter, people are going to forget about Lee while I'm knocking around this garrison. People can't forget. Like, it was really bizarre. And also, this is where Lee
it's your life, isn't
lived.
it? It's your life.
Yeah, all my memories are like, I can picture Lee in the kitchen. I can picture him here. Like,
yeah.
And if I leave this house, I'm going to move to a new house where Lee never lived. And Kai was at school and I thought, oh my God, his dad's died. He's got learning difficulties, like he's autistic. He's going through operations for his hearing loss. I was like, and now I've got to move schools. Like, I can't do this. Like, I had friends on my doorstep.
How are the kids? I've not really touched on the kids.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah.
Like, they are, I am incredibly proud. Like, Lee would be so proud. Kai's 20 now and he's more like, he's got an old soul, but he's more like an 8-year-old. So he needs a lot of looking. I went to special needs school, he needs a lot of help. But he's just the most loving, kindest lad that comes out with some cracking jokes. He's very different. He's very black and white. I remarried and Kai's like, no, Dad's my dad, Joe's Joe. Okay. Whereas Brooke is like, I've got 2 amazing dads.
Yeah,
and I'll call them both dads.
That'd be the
so she calls them both.
Yeah,
he's just very and it is.
Yeah.
He's just very. Well, why would I call Joe dad? Like he's not my dad. But he doesn't mean he doesn't love him. Whereas Brooke's more like, I want to call you dad. Can I call you dad? She's just different. Like, and it's very interesting. They literally, same experience, but have handled it completely different. Again, Kai's not as emotional, so I actually think weirdly his grief. I've seen little bits this year. So when it first happened,
you think it's still sinking in with him?
Because he's so delayed in everything that I've now thought, oh my God, I think his grief is delayed. Like, and it'll be really interesting. Like, when it first happened, he went through some incredible, like, he really changed as a little boy. Hence setting up the charity, to be honest. Whereas Brooke, she's now 16, and she is her dad. Like, it's. Like, she looks like him, she acts like him. I'm like, wow, you only spent 7 months of your life, or 6 really months of your life with him, and yet you are, God, you've got his genes. Like, she's confident, she's funny, she like doesn't care what people think. She just like dance down the street if she wants to. Like, but she's struggled with, I can't remember, and I'm like, cool, you'll never remember, Brooke. You were tiny, like, and she gets really angry and emotional, and she's like, I feel like I don't know who he was. I get told stuff, but I can't remember stuff, and it's so it's really interesting. They both, like any adult as well. They just go through stages. 1 minute she's all right, next minute, boom, something's happened at school. Don't get me started, and she's completely like flawed. Like, so But as young people, she wants to join the army as well.
Oh, good on her. Good on her. Get her up to Harrogate.
We'll see.
Get her up
That's
to
what
Harrogate.
she's like.
Yeah, absolutely. Get her up to Harrogate. So Big Phil says, "I'll see her at Harrogate." Tell her I'll see her up there.
Yeah, we'll see. But she's smart as well. She'll do well. But I'm really proud of them. But they've had it's been tough.
They've
really
had a tough time. They've had a tough time. You don't get no tougher.
No. And so many people think, oh God, it was years ago, or they were little. They can't. I'm like, people just don't have a clue. Like,
you'll be amazed.
Oh, you've remarried. That's all right. I'm like,
stuff from your childhood massively affects you later on in life. Do you know what I mean? Massively is that. your
it will
foundation.
always,
It's your foundation.
It's always going to, and I've learned, you know, in child bereavement, I've learned so, like, and the things we do at the charity, you know, there is always times in a person's life when things will hit them and it will just come flooded, like, out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And you just need that extra little bit of support,
So
touch.
let's move on to the charity. Let's start talking a little bit about the charity. What inspired you to start doing the charity type stuff?
Kai, literally, yeah. Obviously my kids were my life, like, and Lee's, like, do you know what I mean? Everything. I know he loved the army, but he's absolutely idolised these kids, right? Literally was such a good dad. I never gave him enough credit. I never realised quite how good a dad he was. Like, my mates used to say, God, I can't believe all the stuff Lee does. You're so lucky. Like, and I'm like, really? Isn't this like normal? And they're like, and now I'm like, oh my God, like, he just loved being with him, like doing stuff for him. Couldn't have a hospital appointment without Lee wanting to be, you know, he'd drive off exercise miles. Like, he's like, I don't care, I took the Land Rover, got to be at this appointment. I didn't realise that, like, there's rules and, you know what I mean? He'd just come home for a night and they're like, after his funeral, they were like, you know, you're not meant to do that. I was like, oh, really? But yeah, loads of, like, he'd always want to be there. And so when I was told about Lee, my kids were, that was my first, like, how the hell am I going to explain this to Kai? And that's probably repatriation, funeral, but probably telling Kai is the worst thing I've ever done. That was the hardest, to tell a 5-year-old that you're never going to see daddy again. And I knew because of his learning, we didn't know quite what was going on with Kai at that point, but we knew there was something, and I knew I had to be straight. I couldn't mislead.
You can't hide it. You can't say, well, he might be, he's gone to heaven type thing.
Oh, yeah. I did that one, and then that come back to bite me in the... Like, I've now learned, like... Where's
heaven?
It's hard, yeah.
Why can't I go there?
What should we do today? Should we go to heaven? Oh God, okay.
So that must... I mean, I'm slightly sort of like... That must have been a conversation that just...
Yeah, that's the worst. Like, the worst. And weirdly... I've had that conversation loads, probably about 6 times since, because as the kids have got older, you have to retell them because they're like, they can't remember when you told them. Like, Kai was 5. Brooke, I probably never really sat and told her. She just grew up knowing. But as they get older, Brooke will say, Mum, can you just tell me about how Dad died again? And then she'll have questions. And as they get older, the questions get tougher. You're like...
do you think, I mean, Kai might not necessarily do it, but would she ever sit with the guys that were there?
Yeah, she has.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So, you know, that's not closure, but that's a little bit of comfort in knowing
for her,
these
and
guys were there that night.
She sat with his troop sergeant. I think he was troop sergeant. I might have just demoted him, literally.
Sorry, buddy.
Paul. Yeah. But she sat with Paul Howard and they spoke. And I mean, she knows loads of Lee's mates. Like, she loves having conversations with them. It means the world to her if someone knew Lee. Like, she just... But she sat and had a proper conversation, and she asked him, why was you out that day? Why was Dad in front? Why was you in Vikings? What was he doing? Like, all the questions. And then Paul had a moment where, because he had carried so much guilt, because just, you know, one of his own died, and, and he'd carried that guilt. And there was something that incredible moment where Brooke said, it's not your fault, Paul. Like, and they had this, and he said since that, it's helped him move on, because he's like, it was like, God, this is hard.
That's a two-way thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
100%. Like, she was just like, incredible. You didn't put the bomb in the road, Paul. Like, it was almost like his kids saying, I don't blame you, it weren't your fault. And I think he'd carried that for a lot of years. And she was so young as well, but she is just really mature.
So kids do black and white things, don't they?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
kids do black and white things. It's like that, boom.
She's smart, and she's grown up with it, and she gets, she's proud of, otherwise she wouldn't want to join. She's proud of the military. She's proud of her dad. She's, obviously, she has tough times. She hates certain things and certain dates, but she's good. But when I had to tell Kai that, I think sitting him down to tell him was when because the kids were just in my mind. I was like, how is this going to affect them? I don't know how to... We'd never really experienced anyone dying in the family that close to Kai. Like, this was the first. So I just had to tell him, like, do you remember where Daddy is? And he was like, Afghan. And then I just had to say, we used to say, like, the baddies, like, you remember there were baddies there, and the baddies hurt Daddy. he died, so he's never going to come home again. And I said he'd gone to heaven. And then I think I cried, and he comforted me, which is like, but he didn't really show any, like, I don't think he was like, what?
Didn't register.
No. And he's fine. Like, until 2 days, I think it was, or the day later, there was a day he was on the trampoline in the garden, and he was with one of Lee's friends. It took him out there because we were having discussions. So I was trying to keep Kai out the way all the time with these discussions we're having to be made and decisions. And he was on the trampoline, and Chris come back in and said, I don't know whether I've done right, but Kai asked me, what's heaven? Like, where's daddy gone? Why is everyone crying? So this poor lad, you can imagine, can't you? This young single lad, like, and he said, but I just said, like, you know, he's gone up, he's above the clouds, he's in the sky. I don't know whether I've done right, like, but Kai seemed to get that he's not coming back and like he's gone. So I was like, okay, it's cool. Just do whatever feels right, and we'll go with it. And I think Kai then went on a bit of a journey, and this is when I started to think more and more about the children and how, you know, like other children like coping with this and what help is there for him, because he kind of went through phases of, you know, just pure anger. Like his anger was insane, like picking him up from school because the school teacher couldn't get him off the playground because he refused to come in after break until he saw his dad. Like, and he was just aggressive, like tantrums, you know, tantrums where people would look at you and you're like, don't judge, right? You have no idea what's going on in our world right now.
But that'd be enough to send me into a tantrum.
Oh, God.
What are you looking at?
Yeah, and when you go, his dad just died, all right. They're like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, you're in Asda, just like, oh.
Yeah.
Because it'd be like, oh, we don't need to get them yogurts, mummy. No yogurts for daddy. Like, it'd be that. Like, it's just random, like, where you're like, oh, I psyched myself up for this shopping trip, and now I've just been completely floored. Right?
Absolutely ripped the floor out.
And I couldn't queue. I remember leaving my full trolley at Asda because I was just like, oh, there's a queue. I can't stand still. If I stand still, I'm going to think. Yeah. So I just left, put up and left my full trolley there. I was like,
we'll come back at midnight.
Yeah, I can't do this. I can't stand in a queue, like, and think about this stuff. Like, so, yeah, you're just, like, not living. You're just literally, like, in a whirlwind. And then, yeah, like, he went through this massive anger, and then he went into this, like, he just withdrew, like, didn't talk, didn't want to leave my side. I couldn't go anywhere, just, like, and that was when I was like, oh, God, like, something, like, I don't know what to do for Kai. Like, this is not normal. Like, I get the anger.
Yeah.
I'm angry. Like, but this withdrawal stuff, like, it's just going backwards, like, just not Kai at all.
It's
like, we're not
health,
living.
It's mental health on steroids,
yeah,
isn't it? You're plummeting.
Same as me. Like, like, and I was like,
you're plummeting.
When our front door shuts and people leave, it is a depressing place to live. I'm not going to lie. Like, and my cousin, I hated her at the time for this, but she nagged me to go on holiday. It's about 9 months after Lee had been killed, and she was like, "You're coming? I don't care." It was a honeymoon, but she was taking her kids. I was like, Joe, I don't want to go. Like, I'm not going to lie. I don't want to go. The thought of going to an airport with 2 little kids, I don't want to go. I don't want to go on holiday. I don't want to see other families. I just don't want to do it. And she was like, I don't care what you say. I've rung your mum and we're taking you. You coming? And I look back now and think, thank God I did that, because that was literally, it sounds so corny, but it was like, I just had this wake-up call of like, Lee would be doing his nut because I am not in a good place. My kids are not living. And like, I saw Kai just with his little, like with my cousin's kids, just laughing in the pool, relaxing. I mean, don't get me wrong, it didn't all go away, do you know what I mean? But I was just like, leaving the house, coming away from everyone and just having some time in the sun and just seeing Kai. I was like, oh my God, I need to sort this out. Like, this isn't fair.
Yeah.
And then I sat there and started to think, you know, why has no one got in touch with me about the kids? There must be loads of kids that have like experienced the death of a parent who's serving, and no one's doing anything. Or there must be something. I was like, well, I can't believe this. Like, I've had Army Widows Association reach out to me. I've had, you know, other leaflets and stuff like in your purple pack that you get that you don't want to look at, and like all these things. And I'm like,
so just
no one had.
Pack, this is another thing. There's people don't know this stuff.
Yeah.
Seriously, people don't know.
So you get a purple pack. I think it's called purple pack. It's purple.
Yeah.
And it's literally like, so when someone dies in service, the next of kin will get this. And inside it is basically, I mean, I didn't even look in it, if I'm honest, but I'd advise people to look in it because Scotty's are in it now. but it's basically a guide to help you. So you've got your VO and he helps you through it, to be honest. But it'll be leaflets that can support you, places that can support you. It'll be like your paperwork that you need to be doing. Like it's just all the admin-y stuff. But a lot of it is about support stuff for you. So I guess I was again in that denial of don't want to look at that.
Purple patch.
Yeah, and I think it's improved a lot. I've been part of helping. Like there's lots of organisations in it now that
enhance it.
Yeah, and VOs have had different training now. It's coming a long way, but I definitely I just was like no one's been in touch with me. So when I got back off that holiday, that's when I did a bit of research, like a mission, like that gave me a focus. Right, kids, like he's at school, she's playing. Right, like. What is there for kids? Did a bit of nothing. I was like, right, that's it. I'm starting a charity. No idea what I was doing.
Really?
I told my family and friends, I'm starting a charity. I want to raise enough money to have a holiday home so bereaved military families can have that holiday that I had with Kai because you just need a break. It helps. So that's like, and they must have thought, here we go.
Yeah. I was just about to say that. I bet
Nick's on one. Yeah, here we go. But they didn't to my face, and they were amazing. Like my brother, my friends, some of Lee's friends, family, just went for. And we did not long after Leah died. We did a fundraiser. So we talked about Lee's buried in Kings Lynn. I wanted him to be near his dad, and I knew that one day I'd probably end up there because I wasn't going to stay in Tidworth because my mates would all move around. They wouldn't be there forever. Felt right to some families stay nearby, but I just felt like I needed to start anew, or I don't know what it was. I knew I needed to go back, but I needed something in Tidworth for the lads and for me while I was there, and that Lee was a part of this community. So we decided we'd raise money for a bench to be put in Tidworth Military Cemetery. So we did a fundraiser. This was like I was not in my right frame of mind doing it. My mum was like, I don't know how you did that, but we did like this 50-mile walk. And we raised so much money. Like I needed $2,000 for this shit hot bench. It's really cool. It's got the kids' handprints in it and everything. So when we go back, they're like, "Oh my god!" Like, but we got like $6,000, $7,000. It was just the public support was unbelievable. Like, oh my god! Like, it was just it made you just feel the love of the. It was weird. It was one of those like I just felt so loved and like that Lee was really being remembered. So I had $5,000 sat to donate. That's what I was planning on doing, and I wanted to donate it to something to do with military and something to do with kids, but it was still sat there because I hadn't found anything or thought about it then, and so I said to my family, right, that 5k, that's what's going to start this charity then. And they were like, oh, well, you need 5k to register to be a registered charity, and there was loads of discussions about being a foundation that just does fundraising and gives to charities. I was like, yeah, but I can't find a charity to give to. So what's the point of doing that? So we were like, okay, we'll do it. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but if we can help 5 kids to smile and have fun at that holiday home, then let's do it, right? So we were like, okay. So that's how the charity started, but it's mental when I think back to that now.
Scotty's is obviously that's his nickname or something.
Yeah, so Lee Scott was called Scott. He used to call Kai's Little Soldier, so that's where. And I remember I went to Help for Heroes because they were based just in like round the corner, and I went up to Mark Elliott, and I said, and he sort of helped found Help for Heroes with Bryn and Emma, and I said to him, I'd never met him before. I went into Help for Heroes, and I was like, I've had this idea about starting a charity for bereaved military families, and I want to know if got any advice. Have you learned anything? What shall I do? This is what I'm going to call it. And he'd given me the biggest piece of advice he gave me was don't be afraid to say no. Like, you know who you want to help and you know your first goal of helping them, but you can get distracted by a lot of stuff. Don't be afraid to say no. And I was like, okay, weird, but And then he literally said at the end, the only thing I'd probably say to you is Scotty's Little Soldiers is people are going to assume it's army. So you might maybe think about changing the name to like Scotty's Little Heroes or something like that, so they know it's tri-service. And I was like, no. And then I was like, I took your advice. I was like, but I will work mega hard to make sure everyone knows it is tri-service. But that is Lee's. That's the tribute to Lee. So
yeah, look, I think a lot of kids, you know, a lot of parents who aren't military, my little soldier. Like,
exactly.
I think that's a very touching, very touching.
Yeah, I mean, as we move on now, to be honest, it's Scotty's. If I'm honest, now the charity, we just call it Scotty's. Everyone seems to just call it Scotty's, and
well, it's known, isn't it? And you know, it is a very strong brand. You know, a lot of branding is massively important in any business. And in a charity, it's the same. And I think you've got a very good, distinctive. I know it straight away. Someone says Scotty's, I think about that straight away.
And it's really. I think I got lucky. You know, like not lucky, but like. My cousin was a graphic designer, so he designed our first logo, done all like the colours and everything, and then my brother, his background was marketing, so literally is all like the brand and everything has come from Stuart, and so I think that has massively helped. Like I've had good people. My cousin, you know, is like heavily involved in a charity, like so I just feel like I've had people that are along the way to help me understand things. And
let's talk a little bit about how it works then.
Yeah.
How does the charity work? You identify people. Do they come to you? You put your leaflets out in packs, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So first of all, it's massively word of mouth. If I'm honest, normally if you find one bereaved family, they probably know another one. I think so. It's like a membership. So the kids join, families join, and they become what we call our Scotty members, and that is it's all happened so naturally. Like we never sat down and gone and went, this is how it's going to look. This is what we're going to do. It's just happened. I think just talking to other families, listening, do you know what I mean? It's just happened how we, and I think that's at the beginning. I reached out to some widows that had got in touch with me when Lee was first killed. They'd like messaged me to say, my husband died in Iraq. If you ever need someone to chat to, I'd had a couple of those. So I reached out to them and sort of said, I've had this idea, you know, do you feel like your kids need something like this? Would this work? And they were all like, yes, like this is amazing. We'll help you. So I'd done a bit of that. And then I think it's basically a membership. So the children join and it's 0 to 25 years old. And even when they're older than 25, they never really leave, if I'm honest.
Mate, mine still on my case at 36, I'm telling you. You know what I mean?
It's definitely a little community. So they join and, you know, any cause of death. And also now it's like, doesn't matter whether they were serving or a veteran, you know, as long as that parent has served, we want to be able to help their kids. And what we do is we've got like these free programs now. So we've got Smiles, which is all focused on the fun and engagement. It's about helping them not feel alone and isolated. So in that, we've got like the respite breaks. So we now own 6 holiday homes.
Wow. Where are they?
Here we go. Great Yarmouth, Blackpool, 2 in Devon.
Nice.
1 in Berwick upon Tweed and 1 in East Sussex.
Beautiful. So some great places.
Yeah, all on Haven sites. So they're all like got security activities
The Havens are great. They really are, aren't they? You know what I mean? I've used Havens.
They could give us
years.
Better discount though.
Yeah, absolutely. Havens listening. I'm coming.
No, so we within that. So that's where the original goal was, and that's still vital today. Like you see the impact just having a breakaway when you really need it has. We do group events so that they can come together, which is incredible. The friendships that have happened, you just see them like make those friendships and connections. Even if you're just having this massive fun event, they know they're all there for this, like why they're all there, and like they have those conversations. And now, even like when Brooke's having a tough time, I'll sometimes say, you know, do you want to speak to someone at Scotty's? Do you want to just have a little chat with someone? And she's like, no, it's all right. I'm going to speak to a couple of Scotty mates. I'll be all right. Like, they
so
get
they
it.
form their own little community.
It's like veterans. And when they get together,
understanding, talking to someone who's in a similar position is always
massive.
You're going to get a lot out of it, aren't you? Do you know what I mean?
And at the beginning, I was like, I'm not doing group events. That's so naff. I'm not having a load of widows together. I was like, that is cringe. And now I'm like, oh my God, it's the best thing to get with someone who just, you know, everyone's different. Everyone has a different situation, and I think nothing's the same. No one grieves the same. But to have someone that just gets it. I think
sometimes trying to understand someone when you haven't been there yourself.
Yeah.
Is almost sort of like, right, okay, do you know what I mean? But when you've actually been through the same thing yourself.
And feeling like, I'm not going mad. Like this person gets it. Like, thank
thing,
God. Like I thought I messed up with that. And
I feel angry.
Yeah.
You know?
God, I did that.
That's not so bad then, is it? No, that's right.
Yeah, so the group events are amazing, and then we also send gifts and vouchers at different times of the year as well, and that is just a touch point to like help them feel remembered. So yeah, it's been 10 years, but we're still going to send you something on your dad's anniversary or your mum's anniversary. It's Christmas, it's tough, it's remembrance. This is a tough time of year. Scotties are thinking about you. And what that does is naturally, even if the families don't engage with us loads, it just reminds them we're here if they need us and they're not forgotten.
One of the things I've taken from what you said to me as well was you never really wanted to shut that door on Tidworth when you went to King's Lynn.
Yeah.
And this sort of like keeps it open for you a little bit, doesn't it? Because there is, you can dip in and out. Do you know what I mean? As much as you choose.
Yeah, and there are some families that absolutely had different experiences and they're like, don't want anything to do with the military. But I do want, so Scotty's is that little step out.
Yeah.
And there are other families that are like, lost that military connection, but Scotty's brings it back. You know, the kids that can't, like Brooke, you know, there's so many children that can't remember living on a garrison or having that connection, but actually through Scotty's, they feel that connection again. And yeah, it's so important. And actually that program, then the families just trust us and they keep in touch with us. And then when they do have a dip, they can pick up the phone and it's not scary, you know, and there's not a massive waiting list and they've not got to explain what's happened because we already know stuff that's happened. So that's when the support program comes into play. And that is about the emotional health and well-being, you know, the mental health, the self-esteem. So we do one-to-one direct bereavement support. We help parents and carers to support their children, do workshops, so much amazing stuff. And then we have our Strides program, which is heavily focused on development and education. And that's about helping them within their school or their education setting, because that is a key role.
I would imagine, and I don't know, but I'd imagine that if you're a kid and you know you have this major bereavement in your life, your education goes on the back burner for a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Who gives a shit about what's going on in school?
Can, although sometimes they're like schools my safe place.
Right,
school,
okay. So it could
no one's talking about it at school. At home, it's horrible. Do you know what I mean? Because I can fit.
But it's going to have an impact on your education no matter what, isn't it?
Yeah, and then at school, oh God, there's a piece of work we're doing at the moment this year, especially like is all about like trying to make it better at school for bereaved military children. So, I mean, bereavement as a whole for children at schools. But we have some of the children that we work, you know, we have like a council, so they're amazing. We have these group of young people. They obviously tell us how it is. So they very much tell us what we should and shouldn't be doing at Scotty's, because otherwise there's no point. You know, we can have a great idea, but they're like, that's rubbish. Like, that ain't going to help me.
Got you.
So we ask these young people and they tell us straight. And but they are very passionate about the fact that some of their journeys at school have been horrendous. Like some of the stuff they've been situations they've gone through that you're like, you shouldn't have had to go through that. Like, so we are really working at the minute on helping train teachers, helping educate, get the curriculum changed, get more support in schools. So they've like, and I mean, they're incredible. And some of the situations, just to try and explain, is taking a GCSE English exam, and it's write about a war poem, so they're literally in an exam about having to write about a war and what it's like to die, and then they're in the lessons leading up to that. You know, I know for certain, Brooke won't mind me saying, she often speaks about this experience where she's sat in a lesson, and this is so many members go through this, where, you know, there's a video playing about Afghanistan. She was in like a lesson and it was about arranged marriages. Yeah. She's like, you know, they mentioned about arranged marriages in Afghanistan. They're going to show a video. So instantly the word Afghanistan is obviously a trigger point. So she's like, what? Like, and then they talk about the conversation. So the video wasn't even about the war. The conversation in the room then is a couple of lads saying, are we still out in Afghanistan? Why were we even there? Was that a waste of time? Like, what? And so Brooke's very confident, very feisty, will stand up and be like, I have you know, that's a load of rubbish. Like, my dad's friends have told me this. You know, she's saying my dad, you know, she will give it. Yeah. But obviously then she's like, I can't do that lesson. So then I take myself outside. I then get told off for being outside my classroom because I've walked out. And this situation happens so many times. Literally videos being played in history. Literally, like in science, there was something about learning. One child said they had to learn about the effects bombs have on our bodies, and their dad had been killed by it. Yeah. So
come on,
war poems about hanging in the trenches.
Teachers, you know what I mean?
I know and you think it's just common
sense.
And actually,
audience.
and that's the key, isn't it? Half the time, the children are like, we don't want to not educate. We really want the young people of today to learn about conflicts and war and what people. But actually, just remember, there could be someone in your class that's been affected by it.
Absolutely, yeah.
They're like literally the whole class are looking at you while there's a video on.
Yeah.
And if you're not confident enough to just stand up and get out the room, you're just sitting there. I mean, some of them have been told you can't leave the room because this might be in your GCSE and stuff. So it's not always the teacher's fault because they can't know every backstory of every child and they've got lots. But it's just little things like preparing the child, like telling them this is what's going to happen. Do you want to be part of this? Do you not want to be part of this?
Yeah. Or maybe teachers, before they even engage in a lesson that might be a little bit controversial, say, look, we're going to have this lesson tomorrow.
Yeah.
Is anybody going to be affected by it?
I mean, my 9-year-old, she's such a sensitive soul that I don't even think, she's a little bit more distant from it. But some of those videos sound so graphic that you're like, I don't think any kid would feel that.
No,
like,
absolutely.
Is that really going to help their English writing, or is there some other subject you could do?
Yeah. Or could we cover it in a different way?
But that is what is happening. So.
Those are your programs.
Yeah.
What are your plans now for the future? Where are you going with this? What's your ultimate aim with this? To just keep going how you go? Because you seem to be doing a good job.
Yeah.
With what you're doing. So is it plans to just keep it moving where it is, or you've got plans to sort of like start continue to grow?
I think continue to grow. If I'm honest, I never when we first started, and you go through points if you're like, wow, you don't often get time to look back and think, God, how far we've come now. You know. Last year we supported 733 children. I think it was like,
wow, that's incredible.
When you think, God, I started with 3. Do you know what I mean? It's mad. But we have now just done a piece of research just last year where we can now use like the sensors and other information that we've now got, data that we've now got that we never had back then. And it's now estimated that there's like 2,100 children every year that lose a parent that served our country.
Wow, that's big. Those are big numbers. That's not.
Yeah. So for us, we're like,
peanuts, is it?
There are so many more children out there that we haven't yet reached.
Yeah, that aren't getting anything.
That just don't know about us. And like I said, you dip in and out of what suits that family. So it's really so a big focus for us is improving all the time on our set. There's so many more things that the team are like, oh, we could help here. Like there's a big need here. And that's what we do. We look at the feedback we're getting, the trends that are coming up in conversations with the families, and then we're like, right, this has come up so many times. So now we need to have a look at what we can do to offer to help that area, which is what we're doing with schools. But I think it's really hard. Last year was the hardest year I've ever had at Scotty's because every year we've sort of gone like that with membership and we've gone like that with finance. And last year was the first year we went like that with membership and like that with fundraising. And it was
Let's talk about fundraising. Yeah. What are the main ways that you raise funds at the moment? 'Cause you're totally reliant on people's generosity.
Yeah,
I would imagine.
Grants now. Started out massively public. General support was huge. Like the public was incredible. Now, like things have changed. Like people just can't give like they used to.
No, I mean the cost of living crisis anyway.
Huge.
It's
and it's horrible
for some people,
to us,
all that sort
to be
of
honest.
Stuff, isn't it?
Now, like you just can't do it. And also, it takes. It's not trying to put it in a nice way, but it takes so much time and effort to. If you're going out to the general public, you've got to raise a lot of £10 to make when you could apply for a grant or go to a corporate and get a massive chunk and it take much less resource and time. Yeah. So I think this year, because we had to majorly be like, okay, we can't focus on everything. We haven't got the money now. We need to get smart of let's focus on where the big quick wins are. And we realised that actually if we really focus on the corporates and trying to get multi-year deals, corporates and grants, high net worth individuals, just trying to get so that we have got security, because it is hard. Every year you put programs in place, you put services to the children, you see the massive impact they're having. The data and the feedback we get is just phenomenal, that you're having a great impact. And yet you're like, next year we've got to find the money to keep doing that.
What sort of money are we talking? What sort of money are we talking? What would it cost you now to wipe your face for a year?
Well, I would say if we were a £3 million charity a year, we would be able to support a lot more children and be very comfortable. Do you know what I mean? Like right now, I think we're like a 1.7.
Okay, well that's
right.
Still big beans, isn't it?
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, like we do still get so many individuals fundraising, and they're like our supporters are incredible. They generally are the best. And we still get loads of people. Like we hold an annual ball that we do, and that's amazing. Like people come. It's a big celebration of the charity. Like, so there are lots of individual people supporting us, but I think for us, we have to focus on trying to get some multi-year deals so that we can feel a bit more secure with what we're doing, and not every year be like, and then the general public's donation can help to do the other stuff. But you're just like, God, this is serious stuff that we're doing, and if we don't know if we've got the funds next year to do it. So we've just started trying to get some partnerships and relationships going to be able to help us with that. Yeah. So that's a big focus on the fundraising side. The focus on the family side is to keep doing what we're doing, reach more children, and really look at the Strides program around this education piece.
Because you've set it up in such a way whereby it's not one of these charities that goes, right, you're done now, see you later.
Yeah. Never.
They stay on the journey.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is just, it's not just multiplying, but people are staying. So it's never going to get smaller, is it?
Exactly. Yeah. They're literally, and that is what just happened naturally, because you make those connections, you make those and that's what I love, because actually you're with them. And I always remember someone saying to me quite early on, like, oh, I don't know whether that's good to keep them in their grief. Like, are you almost pulling them back into their bereavement every time you put on an event? And I started to think, oh God, are we doing wrong? Like, oh my God. And then I'm like, no, it's not, because the support program, that's where they really talk about their grief, their bereavement, their feelings. That is only for children that really need that extra support, that touch points. It's about supporting the parents when they're going through tough times. And also, a child doesn't ever just get over a bereavement. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's always there. There's always going to be points when they're like, I just need to dip in and have a little bit of support. And the rest of the other programs and the community part is about just offering that holistic support. You're not alone. You're not isolated. You were part of the military community, and now you're back. You're always going to be part of it. And that is what we find. And then the families, they just go, they'll turn 25, like a young person will turn 25. But the hopefulness is that at that point, we've given them some great tools to be able to carry on. They've made some incredible friends that they'll stay in touch with forever. And that actually, if they really hit a crucial moment, they can come back and say, Scotty's. They end up volunteering, fundraising, mentoring little ones anyway. But I've had a baby. You're like, oh my God, I feel really old. I remember you when you first came. It is. But they are there. Like, we've made that commitment, made that promise, and you're like, so, and that gives you the fire in the belly to, like, when the tough times happen, you're just like, we can't stop. There are children that literally are relying on this. Imagine if we took this away, like,
That's the big thing, isn't it? The void that would be created.
Yeah.
You've filled a gap now. You've put a massive thing into the system, which is helping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was mental that it wasn't there before. Like, I still think, God, I can't believe
I just think
here.
Like, I can't name another podcast that's ever dealt with military wives, for instance.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'd love to go down that route, and I probably will go down that route, interviewing more people about their experiences surrounded by the military.
I think there's a couple.
It's such a huge part of the military.
There's a couple that talk about, I think it's military spouses or something. There's a couple that I've definitely heard of, and a couple I've spoke to. And they're all about, life in a military. Obviously, I'm not as fun of a guest because I'm talking about the other side. But
I think you're an epitome of military. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You've done so much within that space. And you totally get.
Not on my own, to be fair.
No, I'm not. No, let me big you up, all right? All right? I think you've done tremendous stuff. I really think you have. And I think if Scotty's looking down on you, he must be so proud. You know
I hope
he
so.
Must be absolutely.
I think he'd be buzzing. He was quite a show off, so I'd imagine he's loving it.
I think he'd be. When you hook up again upstairs, I think he's gonna be running you around to meet everybody and say, look what my missus did.
That's exactly what he was like before. Trying to make me have friends. I'm like, I can make my own friends. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine.
Listen, you've been a tremendous guest. You're doing tremendous stuff, and I hope that you
you
continue to do so. We'll certainly try and support you as much as we can. And look, we'll catch you around the various bazaars. But one thing you've got to promise me before you go is that you will become a friend of us here at Force Media and Force TV.
Yeah.
And we want to know what you're doing. So
cool.
We may well come and see you again, and hopefully you'll come and see us for sure.
Yes.
Listen, thanks for being on the
Thank
debrief. You have been debriefed.
I feel like I have as well.
Scotty would have liked that. No, we'd like to see you get debriefed.